The question, since we're in COVID, the COVID question is, can anyone see my screen? I guess yes. Okay, so data quality with Azure Data Factory and Synapse here. So let me just switch slide. Perfect. Who am I? The Pankar did a good introduction. I'm an Azure Data Solution Architect at AB Health. It's a brand new company that started in Asia. We are going we're building a brand new platform for a lot of hospitals in Asia. Yeah. I did a lot of on-prem ETL development, right? When you have something like 20 years of experience, of course, you did on-prem. Cloud was not there before. So use SSIS, Genio, Informatica Data Stage, data warehousing, a lot of data warehousing development. When I started my career in the beginning of the century, so beginning 2000, data warehousing was brand new. so I have a lot of experience there. I wrote several books on data integration. I'm like Deepankar. I'm co-managing the user group in Montreal with my partner in crime there, Michel Goudzait. Right. So now I'm going to talk about different data quality classification, data profiling, which is the most important activity that you can do to a data project that you have to do, and how we can implement that. How can we assess the data profiling with Synapse Sparks, data pipeline tools, and data factory implementation for data quality. Here, this is the data lakehouse. All right. So this is the diagram representing the data lakehouse here. What we have at some point, we have our we have our sources here. Okay, and then we copy those sources into the bronze layer, which is the raw zone, right? So we ingest the data basically as it is in the sources. Then here, the most of the data quality work is done between the bronze and silver, okay? So this is the, I would say, system data quality. This is basically the data quality that say, okay, so if your age is more than 150, it's not good, right? Or if you were born in year 200, right? It must be something like 2000 something. So we do the system data quality between here. From silver to gold, right? So this is the presentation, the consumption zone. Sometimes SQL Server, sometimes not. Sometimes might be a storage account, or might be a container into your storage account here. So here we do business transformation. Now we apply business validation there, right? If I'm a small company and my sales yearly are something like $1 million, and during a month I have something like $5 million sales, or I did pretty well, or basically I have some data quality issues, right? So this is, we need to distinguish between system transformation and business transformation. So system data quality versus business data quality. I will come back to that slide a few times during the presentation. So when do they arise? When we integrate source system with others, right? Or we simply copy a source system and then we discover that the source system here that we're using has data quality issues, right? Sometimes the report that they built on that source system, they kind of try to correct those data quality, right, issues. But when we take the raw data, this is where we see that we have data quality issues. Most organizations, they don't have time, or they don't take the time to have a data quality team to correct those issues. So most of the time, we have to deal with it as a data engineer. So of course, if we don't take care of that, they will lead to data pipeline failure in prod. And the most important, when people will do report on your data, the data will not match, right? I'm looking at sales $1 million on your reports, but in reality, I have $1,259,000, right? I have a client like that. Just give you an example. Data doesn't match for 29 cents, and he's asking me what's happening, right? I told him the time I investigate for that will cost you more than your 29 cents, but he wants to know. So sometimes it's something very simple. but sometimes it might be a formatting, right, in your source, especially when your source are Excel. So sometimes when we convert this Excel to a CSV file, or we bring that into a Parquet file later in the pipeline, we might have some formatting issues. So there are several classification, right? Consistency here, what I have in my source system is the same thing that I have in my report at the end of the day, even though data has been aggregated and transformed, right? $1 million sale, $1 million on my report. So maybe the breakdown would be different, but at the end of the day, the number matches, right? So, and correspond in, so here, this guy here, information correspond to the reality in all the systems. Yes, because sometimes it might match, it will match for one system, but not for the others. So when you see system, think about data sources, right? If I go back to my slide here, all the sources that we have here. So oops, sorry. Let me go back to my slide. Okay, so completeness. So we have a complete street address, right? So I have the street number, I have the street name, and I have the province and the postal code in Canada, right? And so this is very important. But sometimes we have the postal code, but we don't have we don't have the province or the street address. Or from one case I had with a client, we had everything except the postal code. So when we want to map this data into a Power BI map, this causes a lot of issues because you don't have the postal code here. So you need to find other things like the province, but it's not as precise as the postal code. This here, this one here, it's more nice to have. Auditability, we need to, we can trace the data back to the source system. So this is something that will be nice to have, but it's not to do when we integrate data within each other, when we aggregate data. This is pretty tough. And ordered, so the same format is found in every structure, right? Like especially Oracle, right? We have DD, mon, right, for mon, and YY, right? So this is when I talked to you about the error that we have for the year 200. It was coming from Oracle. The mask was not applied properly when we read the data. So this is Oracle has all the information, but the way we read the data might be different. So this is very important. At the end of the day, if I go back to my slide here, let me remove that handwriting here, right? So here we might have, in the sources, we might have DD1YY, okay? We might have for the system MM, my God, my pen is like MM. Let me try something else. Okay, okay, MM, DD, right? But at the end of the day here, we want to present the same thing, DD, MM, YY for example. This is what I mean when I say it's ordered. Here, we want to present the same structure here to all the reports, because when you build a report and you do date intelligence, date calculations, you want to make sure that you have the same thing. You have the same, you see the same value, you read the same date, right? Especially not the year is not really a problem. Now we're not in the 90s anymore when we said the 93, right? Now we have 2013, we have 2022, but especially the month and the day, right? Because sometimes we invert the month and the day. So June 6th, right? So it might be, that's easy, 6 to 6, but May 6th, right? We have, it might be 2022-0506 or 2022-0605. So we need to be careful with that. So where should the data be resolved, right? So basically, guys, we have A, B, C, D here. All right, the A, B, C, D here should be here. I think we have some noise here. We have some echo, Dipankar. Yeah, okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
That's fine. Okay, so so most of them should be resolved in the source system. I would say 90% of the time, right? Should be resolved in the source system. But we're dreaming here because most of the source systems, this is what I use, and why do I care about your data lakehouse or your other system? this is the data we have, and it works for us, right? This is what they say here. So, and I'm skipping here. So it all resolved here or resolved here. So a lot of times, because we're integrating systems, we're going to resolve the issue, like the date issues that we're talking about, right? The date format, it will be resolved by the ETL. We're going to adopt the standard. And the other thing is, what they say here, political DMZ here, because it should be addressed all the time. It should be addressed in the source system, right? I was talking about the completeness of the address, right? I don't have the postal code. Maybe I can, in the ETL, call a REST service here and passing the information from your address and get your postal code, right? Technically, it's possible. But ideally, if I should avoid doing it because we're patching, right? And we don't want to invent data, right? We want to consume the data as it arrives as much as possible. But most of the time, we don't have any choices. I would say, if I say 90% should be resolved here, in reality, it's not that. It's something like 20%, right? The rest of the time, we need to create some mapping files or mapping table, hard code something into our pipeline to correct this data. So how do we identify the data quality issues that we have, right? Data profiling. Guys, I can tell you, ladies and gents, that it's not done. Most of the time, that the data profiling is not an activity that people see, right? So the problem is with the data profiling that it takes time, but it's very important. It should be done by a data analyst, not a business analyst, not a functional analyst, a data analyst, someone that is working closely with the source system, with the clients, with the architects, and also with the developers, right? The data and the data engineer. So we can find many pitfalls here. Basically, we are assessing the source system here, data quality. So it prevents data pipeline to be refactored. Let's say you develop your pipelines, and then you develop it. It works well. You need testing. You go to another layer, which is QA, and then everything is fine because now you have a bit more data, but it's not production data yet, right? So now you go to QA, and then your data, your pipeline runs fine. You arrive in pre-production. Now you're using more close to production data, right? So production like data in pre-prod. Now your pipeline are failing. Or now you discover some data quality issues here. So you might be able to refactor your pipeline, but the development phase is done, right? My pipeline is done, right? It works in QA. It's in pre-prod. I should not have to add any bits of code or any transformation in it because it's working, basically. So this is also, if we don't correct it, sometimes we find it in prod, right? Sometimes we don't have the pre-production environment, and in QA or dev, we don't have access to the production data because it's confidential. So we need to here, then your pipeline fail, right? Because, oh, we encountered a null where we're not supposed to have null. Okay, because we didn't do the data profiling from the production system. So it helps identifying data quality issues upfront before we develop here. It shortens also the development time for the integration developers because if I don't have to refactor my code all the time, right? We go back here. If I don't have to refactor my code all the time, it helps me a lot at some point too. I'm sure that what I'm going to develop will work in production or will work in pre-prod when they test it here. So null values, yes, they are very. I'm always pissed off at the person. I'm always upset at the person, I would say, that invented the nulls, right? I hate nulls because nulls is not equal to null, right? Nulls mean I don't know. So unless you use a special NC-SQL syntax and stuff like this in SQL Server, null will never be equal to null, right? So because I don't know, what you don't know, what I don't know, it's completely different. So that's why usually in the data warehouse or data lakehouse and in the gold layer, we're going to replace the null by n/a. So at some point, we can say, you know what, it's n/a, it's a code. We're going to be able to join it, right? Also, yeah, this is what I'm saying here. Why? Because null value cannot be indexed, because the RDBMS cannot know what a null value is, so it cannot index it. That's the main reason here. So if you have a lot of volumes, you will have a lot of you will have some performance issues here. Even though you're using something else, if you're using Spark, you will have the same issues with nulls. It's easier to use something like n/a or something like that. And then what you do, you need to do when you present your data in views, usually, or your presentation layer, you replace them function like null if. Null if it's n/a, so it gives you a null for your presentation layer. But your performance will not suffer because you have nulls. Referential integrity, right? How many times we integrate systems and we have the parent, not the child. We have the child. We call it an orphan because we don't have any parents for that child here. So it leads to incomplete value, right here at some point, because I would like to, my numbers will not be good because I'm missing a lot of entries here. And it sometimes we say, oh, we don't care because we need to do left join, right? But left join is so it can lead to so misleading values in your report that it's easier to remove the left, do an inner join. How do we do an inner join? By not having the nulls in your system here. So we need to identify the missing referential integrity and report it to the source system administrator, right? So the source system should be able to correct it. If you're integrating multiple systems, then you need to look at how can we correct it. Sometimes you will ask you will get the data analyst here to help you on that one. And usually it's rejected. The referential integrity is rejected in your pipelines because we have some data quality assertions in our pipelines. Column values, right? I spoke about the date before, right? I spoke about Oracle conversion before. Invalid column name. Name with only one character, right? Like my name is Christian. Sometimes I might see COTE, Christian.cote, Christian Cote, right? So it depends on what system we're talking about here. Although we have fuzzy joins and stuff like these, you should not rely on that as much as possible because it's prone to errors. Invalid numbers here, right? This small number for an integer column or the opposite. I had an integer number, so I have $1.25, and then when I converted it, when I lent it into an integer column, I have 1. So remember I told you before about the 20 cents difference for my client. This is that kind of error that happened. We had an integer value, and it should be a decimal. So data and value rules. So data rule is row by row. On a row, invalid age person, right? Smaller than 0 or greater than 125. Or the sales in February are lower than January sales. We have a lot of duplications, so sales are too high at some point. These are the value rules that I'm talking about here. So those kind of things we should assess it. And the thing we have ways when you do data profiling to see those kind of errors, but it's always something that we use. I would say custom code for that, unfortunately, because this is so tied to your business, so tied to your data that it has to be custom for those kind of things. If I'm talking about column value here, yeah, that's easy. We do the data profiling. I'm going to show you some techniques after that. That's easy. If I'm thinking about referential integrity, that's easy too. Null values, it's easy. But those two here, data rules and value rules, it depends on your data. Because some places, okay, age here, smaller than 0, that's a given, okay? But 125, right? I put 125 here. I told you about 150 now. In 20 years from now, maybe will live to 130 years old, right? I don't want to get there one day, but I mean, with the health system now that we have in place, and we might live longer than that. So basically, how are we using the data profiling discoveries here? So it leads to a lot of things, right? So we have several ways of dealing with it. We can say garbage in, garbage out, right? I have this. You don't give me time to develop something else. You don't have any idea what to do with it. That's it. This is what you're going to have into your report. We can flag invalid rows. Here we can say, you know what, this is the data seems to be invalid. I tested it, it's invalid, but I still want to present it to the users because some power users wants to use it, right? They know that we don't have any province, right? But they know that the province now most of the time is Ontario, or it's Quebec, or it's Nunavut, or whatnot. So it might be possible to do something with that, right? Reject the date. So this is the most drastic option. The data will not be it was a B here, available to any users. So we're going to reject the data, right? So we pass the data or we reject the data. So it was not, that's nice. I have a pen here, data and B. All right. So reject the data. So, but sometimes you have to do it, but I'm going to show you a technique after that when you reject the data, you're going to be able to say, hey, I rejected the data, so I need to alert the user that I have some rejects here. Usually, those two here are the most popular option. This one, usually, the user say yes for now, but at some point, what will happen is that the people will not use your system or your report. So it's better to correct it. So what do we do once that we define the validation rules or the business rules, right? So we're going to stop the data integration. This is choices that some kind will say. If you find too many errors, stop it. We're going to correct it, and we're going to restart our load, right? I have a client that is using a data lake, and in fact, he wanted me to load CSVs directly to a database. Yeah, I said no. We're going to use a layer in between, which is data lake storage account. We in Azure, we use using Synapse. We need to use a storage account, and then I will be able to assess if we have some rejects, so if we have some data quality issues, and if that happens, then I will be able to prevent loading data to your system, making it unstable. And when it's unstable, it's not complete, your report are not working much. Now we are all in panic mode. We need to restore the database. Restoring database is never easy. In Azure, it's easier, but not that easy, right? So sometimes we don't have the accesses, especially in prod, right? So we need to call someone else, a DBA or a system administrator, to restore the database here. And what's happening here is that when we identify those data profiling discoveries, it leads to a better mapping document for the data integration developer. If the data integration developer has all the specifications and they are clear, right? So, and we have all of the possibilities, right, as much as possible, then it will lead to better program. Because when you're a developer, when you develop data integration pipelines using Spark, using Databricks, using C#, whatnot, the first time that you develop it, right, it's good. Refactoring it, sometimes now you might introduce bugs because it might not be the same developer that is going to develop it. Of course, you're going to rely on documentation, right? It's a joke. Documentation, usually we don't have it. So the new developer will arrive and will be so afraid of modifying the code that basically he will simply leave the code there and do a correction after. So if we have less bugs, if we have identified all the possible pitfalls of using data profiling, we will avoid as much as possible this kind of issues that we need to refactor our program. And data profiling is not a one-time deal, right? We need to do it periodically to make sure that if we receive new data, that preemptively we'll know that the report data will not be good. And we also know that we need to correct our pipeline in advance, right? I'm better to be scared than to be surprised, right? So I prefer to know in advance that I need to have a 2 months effort on this pipeline because the data will not be good, than having to say, oh, the data is not good. Then I said to my manager, I have 2 months to do it. No, he said you have 1 week, right? Or do it as soon as possible, right? So it's better to have this to identify the pitfalls before. So data profiling using Spark, right? We can use Spark basically, for those who don't know, it's basically code that we're going to write, and Spark is the engine that will execute that code. I'm going to show you an example after that. There are existing libraries like Pandas profiling that can be used with small data volume, right? So if you have billions of rows, that will not be good. We have an open source library here called Great Expectation. I think it's called greatexpectation.io. You go there, and they have library that can be used in Python with the Databricks and soon with Synapse here, with Spark, basically. And SQL and Python for larger volume. If you have billions of rows, I advise you to use SQL Server for that, or Python, I would say PySpark at some point, custom PySpark to assess the quality of it. So as I mentioned, most of the tools support more than 1 million rows. It's tough, right, for them, because it's a library. Pandas, what will happen is that it will, when you have a distributed environment, will only work on the driver node, right? So it will not use the distributed environment. It will only work on the master node, not on the workers. So it will not distribute the workload. So this is why when you have lots of data, sometimes you might lose your driver node here. So we have custom profiling methods. I'm going to show you some of them here. We can aggregate the data, like distinct values per country, stuff like that. Or you can split the data into manageable data sets, like you partition the data by year. And then you can use those libraries here, which is Pandas, so open source libraries for that. All right. Oh, this is time for the demo. Yep. And slideshow. For some reason, let me just turn off my camera. Perfect. When I turned off my camera, I saw that he asked me to discard my handwriting, which is perfect. So we have Spark here. Okay, this is a notebook. You see, I wrote a lot of code to read sales ST. So for those who don't know what is sales LT, it's in the AdventureWorks database. AdventureWorks LT database that is widely available on the Azure platform. When you create a database when you create a database in Azure SQL database, you have the option to restore a sample, right? So the sample would be sales LT, would be AdventureWorks LT database. Basically, this is the database that you see here. This is the customer address. This is the one I did, which it's a small, simple database, but I use it a lot when I do my demos, my presentations. So I'm loading the customer data. Customer data, this is what I use the most. Forget about the validated. Let's go to sales lt.customer. 1,000 rows. See, name style, title, first name, middle name. This is all what you're going to see here. Name style, title, first name, middle, last name, suffix, and everything here. So I do some bunch of transformation here. Basically, I'm adding other things like the customer address to it. And then after that, I can do some data profiling here. I'm just going to describe what I have, right? This is the structure of what I have. I did the Conti database here, the data I inserted, blah, blah, blah. But the most important is here. At the end, I'm using a library called Pandas profiling here. What I'm doing for that, I have a standard data frame that I convert to pandas. This only works on the driver node. So which means that if you have more than 1 million rows, it's good to crash your driver node, depending on the size of your row, right? And then after that, I do a profile. And what it gives me, it's a nice HTML report here. Look, if we look at the title here, right? I can say I have 4 distinct values here. Yeah, they are all distinct for sure. Missing values, I have 3 missing values here. And I have the memory size. I toggle the details here. I go to the overview here. Not much that I can see character in code, that's okay. Here, categories. 20, on all the row counts, I have 241 rows that are Mr. I have some Mrs. I have some seniors, say Narita, and I have some missing values here. I can do the same with first name. So this gives me, if I'm a data analyst, this gives me, okay, what are we doing with the nulls? Upfront, what are we doing with it? Senorita, we are senior. Yeah, that might be okay, but maybe it's not what I want, right? Maybe my data is in French, and now for some reason we have some problem with data, so it should be MNE for Madame at some point here. So we need to do some corrections. And what will happen is that, just show you something. Yeah, data model. Give me 1 second to try. Yeah, that's perfect. Let me open this. This is from Kimball Group, kimballgroup.com. Yeah, I love them. Yeah, because they were, when I was doing the data work, you see, this is not new, eh? But what they do here, basically, is that they have some, this is your data model here. If I go to customer, this is another customer table, but this leads to this data model here, right? This is not data model, but this is to this data mapping document that you give to your developers. This is very important here. The display name will be in the report. How are we calling it into the report here? If I go back here, perfect. This is what I was looking for. Description here. I know we can have purview now that give us some description here. So total number of rows and ETL rule. This is what you need to give to your data integration developer. This is me when I develop pipelines. If I have a report like that, hey, this is, hey, look, the customer full name, this is how it's done. It's separated by comma, right? So last name, first name, middle name here. So all of these things, so data profiling will lead your data analyst, or leads you if you're doing this document to be able to build this document here more precisely here. I'm looking about the cluster. I can have the employee, right? Look, detail rules. Join on department ID. It comes from this table. Join from the department ID. I have my source system here and my target. Now I need to join on department ID to find my information. So, and you see here the size, it's not very big, but this is something that is very important to have. So let's go back to Spark here. So this data profiling will lead to that, right? The other option we have is, let me go to my pipeline. Let me start my data for debug here. So we can do it with it. We have another option, which is, if you go to the same website, Kimball Group here, we have something. Check my SSMS. Let me open a few files here. Some files, perfect. Table list. They have some paginator report here. When I run this, it gives me the structure here of the file, right? This is what I had: minimum value, maximum value, right? Company name here, max value. Might not be interesting for that, but for numbers that might be pretty interesting here. If I go to the details, open another file here. I have the column lists. Let me run this. So this is the structure of my file here, right? If I want, with the paginated report that they give here, I can go to the column detail. So now let's go to the title, right? The same thing I told you before. Oh, now I have 7. I don't have 3, I have 7. So maybe because I did some transformation in Spark. But you see, if you have a lot of volume, this is the kind of data profiling that you can do using SQL. And if I go to, just go Power BI report builder. Yeah. You can do a report, paginated report, or basically a report, right? That looks like this guy here. Once it opens, you need to show you on the other screen. Bear with me, guys. I have 5 screens here. Wait, where is it? Ah, there. Perfect. So if I run this, yeah, oh yeah. And what was the password I had opened before? I forgot. Simply open. Yeah. One guy told me once, never type any code when you're doing a presentation. This is almost what I did here. You see? This is the same thing I was showing to you, right? The only thing that is not working because I'm not in Power BI is when I click on address, I cannot see the detail here. But basically what it will show you is the detail that I show you with SSMS, 60% Management Studio. This tab, but it will show you this tab here. So this is plainly SQL. When I mentioned to you, you can use Python, you can use SQL. Some people prefer to use Python, but this is plainly SQL here. And we send a bunch of parameters here, and we can profile any data here. If I go to first name here, see, I have all of the names here. All the current count of this name here, and I can go further and see the accent and of the name here. So okay, go to first name, yeah. Distinct values here. Average gender value, the maximum is 24. Why this is important? Because when we do a data model, especially with the database, we want to know what the length of the data, the length of the data that we have here, right? So if we use, it's not that important as it was before, but we don't want to have truncation issues when we load data into a database. Nowadays, people will say, oh yeah, I can use char2 characters, right? Or char4 here for the title, or varchar4. It's not very important. You can use nvarchar10, you can use nvarchar25, because with table compression, data compression now by row or by page, or just the Unicode compression, so nvarchar and varchar will not make any difference now nowadays. So with table compression, you don't care about that, but here for title, I would say our title should be something like nvarchar 20, right? We're going to standardize the length of our columns. So why I'm talking, yeah, perfect. Let's go here to my data flow. One way I can profile, and I use it a lot when I present here, not when I present, when I work, I will use the data preview that comes with Data Factory or the pipelines with Synapse. So when it's going to arrive, it's fetching a few rows here. It's always long the first time, because I just started my machines here. Once it will appear, we have something called statistics. And pressing on that will give us the number of nulls that we have and whatnot. So we can do it in Power BI too. The same functionality is available in Power BI. So one day we'll have what I want to show you. Yeah, perfect. So if I click on title here, you click on statistics. Click on statistics. It's if you do it with Power BI, it's faster because Power BI has Power BI. You can import the data in Power BI. But when you have a lot of volume, this is what we can do. And here, what I can do, I can go to debug is setting here. I can see, bring me 1 million, right? Rows here, or 100,000 rows. And then I can, here, since I'm using the Power Spark, I have 8 machines behind my data flow. It's going to be able to handle a lot of value. So I have 840 rows that are not null. See the maximum, I was talking about the distribution here. If I use the first name here, and I use statistics, so yeah, because I changed something, I need to refresh, but I can do the same thing everywhere. So yeah, if I use the first name, statistics, I might not, you see now it's showing me less information, but still it asks you to find what you want to find when we develop the pipeline like that. Want to say, do we have nulls? Do I need to do something with the null, right? So basically, this is what we want to find out here. And so yeah, I can show you all the column, but basically this is how it works. So you see, yeah, normal middle name. Not everyone has the middle name, so it's normal here. Dipankar, do we have any questions so far?
No questions so far, but anyone, you can unmute yourself and ask question if you have any.
Yeah.
Or also chat is open, so you can ask your question. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Anytime, guys, you interrupt me. If you have any question, I'm very verbose, as you know. I'm fast forward when I speak. So.
Okay, I think there is already a question. Can you do this dynamically? Sneeka, if you can unmute yourself, I would like to explain a bit.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. Hi. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Sure.
Hi. My name is Nick. Okay.
Hi, Nick.
So, thank you very much for the presentation. It's brilliant. I just have one question. Okay. Having one table, first name, last name, the common things, that's very good. But there are scenarios that I've dealt with, like 150 million fields, or 5.2 million fields. And is there a way to pass each table's name so it will go through each column one by one and generate a report? However, I know there's lots of ways, but there's a way to do it dynamically? Yes, we will have scripts like right now, the one we see on the screen, that I want to cherry pick something, I want to do it, kind of visually myself. But is there a technique to basically generate all the say, hey, here's my tables, maybe CSV, whatever, just go through all of the tables, all of the fields, give me a report on, min, max, null, and so on. And of course, a dynamic way, as in segmented by year or month. Like, I'm sure you know what I mean.
I hear you. I hear you. Yeah, if you want to do it, like you have to be. There is not much tools to do it. Even Informatica, they're big infrastructure as a service tool that do the data quality here. They will struggle with the kind of requirements you were talking to me. So you will have to develop something custom, like the script I'm showing you here. But I outputted the values, right? But you will call the store procedures and pass those values. So me, what I would do, I would say something like. If I do a new query here, like name from sys.table, right? If it's a database,
I know what you mean.
Yeah. So then you can do it like that here, and with this name from sys.table for some reason that's but you understand what I mean, right? So this is something like that I would do, or
just columns.
If you
just columns.
Sys.columns, and then after that you do with the object ID, you join it with your table, and then you will be able to pass it to a script similar to that, right? So you will pass those columns here. I did it before. I was using a script that I used at the time 7 years ago at the inception of Power BI at the time, and it took to generate that script in a fast machine on premise at the time. It took I have I think at 100,000 columns, okay, and it took me something like 9 hours.
That's the problem I'm having. So running these on T-SQL on-prem, as a test, okay, fine. But in the cloud, how could you come up with a faster solution? I'm saying, does Panda has a better solution?
Not
solution
yet.
not
yet.
yet. Okay.
Okay, but look, if I go back to Pandas with the profiling notebook here,
Yeah.
right? Pandas profile, and to be honest with you, I asked this question to Databricks in 2020, right? What do you have for data profiling, guys, right? You're in data science. You need to have something similar to that. And the one that seems to have the magic tool, right? The magic recipe here. Because look what I'm doing with data frame. I'm using a data frame, right? So maybe I could build a data frame on the fly, right? And after that, but now what I want to say is that you need to, I don't know, maybe there are tools on the market, but I'm not aware of that is so that will do it. No, they can do it with 25 columns, right? That's easy, right? But as you mentioned, under of 1,000 columns, and now we're showing you a database, right? Database has a maximum in SQL Server 1,000 columns. That's fine. But in the cloud now, if I have a CSV file or Parquet file, I might have a lot of columns, much more than 1,024. So we need to have something similar to that. Pandas will be slow, but you will need to write some Python scripts for that. Great Expectation. This is the tool I was talking about before, will help you a lot, but it will not do data profiling. It's more to identify the errors in your pipeline. I'm going to show the assert technique, the assert transformation with Synapse pipeline. But basically, we need you on your own when you have that amount of columns.
Yeah,
unfortunately.
Yeah, the biggest value here is like the dynamicness and everything. The biggest value is lots of developers and teams don't get the point that creating a table is not a one-day job anymore. You got distribution, partition, hash routing, replica. You have to do all of this what you're doing, and thank you very much. Someone is doing it to do it before you create a table. This is a big concern on mine. But anyway, I got my answer. Thank you very much. It was brilliant. Thanks.
My pleasure. Thanks. Any other question, Mr. Pankar?
No, Christian, you can go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So let me go back to the presentation. All right. So demo is done. So I showed you already this presentation. I showed you a bit of that, right? So I'm going to show you now the technology is in the pipelines. And I'm not talking about Spark here. I'm talking about the pipeline, the mapping data flow I showed you before. But you can, activity. I should have passed my presentation in before that. I should have used my presentation. I should have used data quality for my presentation. All right. So the demo here. So I showed you the Spark here. Let's go back to what I wanted to show you. There are several ways, okay? I'm going to show you a few tricks here. So I showed you that now that we assess everything, now what I want to do an assertion. Great Expectation, this is what it's going to do, but it has libraries of assertions. Here I did it on my own, right? I said, let's put an assert statement here and assert that it's true. So we have several things here. Accept unique or accept true. Okay. Expect unique, expect true. So the title must not be blank, right? In my case, remember, we have 7 rows that were blank here. And the description is this, right? So this can be passed dynamically because we have expression builder here. We can filter the data or not when it assesses it, so it's faster. And we have the expression. If it has to be not null, okay? So what is going to give me in the preview here? Let me refresh it. Hopefully it will be faster this time. Yes. Let's look now at the title not blank, right? It's going to show me all the errors with the title not blank. I have 2 errors on that set here, but this is the debug, right? So you see, so it gives me that it's not I have this issue here. My title is null, and I have another one. I know we have 7, okay, but now I'm in debug mode here. So now what I'm going to do here, I'm going to use a derived column to say, give me the assert error message, because I can have many on the same, I can have many assertions. A row might have multiple faulty columns, right? So this is what I'm going to do. Then I'll do my lookup. And what I want to show you is this here. Is the row valid? Row is valid means is error. The assertions here give me two things. Give me assert error messages, and it give me here. I'm sorry. Row is valid, right? It is error. We have an error on that row. So what I'm doing in my case, if I don't have any error, that's easy. Go in my database. If I have errors here, I'm going to do a few things here. I'm going to get the reject timestamp here. I'm going to get the rows values. So I want to get the context of the error. I rejected something. I want to get the context of this error. If I open the expression builder, I choose to add those columns here. So I'm building a JSON structure here. And this might be different for all of your pipelines. So you're going to get the ID because I want to be able to trace the ID that was faulty. And I also have a bit of context here because I might use it into a Power BI report or into an alert, right, later. So, and of course, the table name. I'm going to reject that here. Now, since it's a JSON value, the JSON value cannot be into a file, right, a Parquet file, or into a Delta table. The JSON value cannot be different from one row to the other. The JSON structures, right? So in my case, I choose this structure here, right? Company name address. But if I have another table that doesn't have that has only 4 columns instead of 5, my pipeline will fail. Basically, when you try to insert, because the structure is different. So with Data Factory or Synapse, we're using the stringify. Basically, we're going to convert the JSON into a string here. So the stringify rows value, and yeah, I want to call it I want to call it row values here, and the expression, yeah, use the row value. So what I had here, okay. So what will happen here? I go to the data preview.
Kirsten, would like
Yes.
to take one more question. I think Nick has other question.
Sure, sure.
Nick,
go ahead.
While you were doing it, I think this rejected. You were creating a JSON. Like this is exactly where your mouse is, where your cursor is. Like this last complete line. Yeah, exactly, all the way. Is there a way to say, hey, here's the record, combine them as a string, and then save it? Because right now, if I'm a developer, I have to each time, create one of these and basically a data flow and cherry pick each file, each field and pass it on. Do you get my point? Is there a way to say, hey, pick all the fields? Is there a way to do that?
To do JSON, yes, but you will need to convert it to JSON. It's not the same transformation that you would use at that point here. You would convert the columns, okay?
Yeah.
Because what we could do here, I'm just going to show you. Yeah. There is something called columns.
Here. Oh, it will extract get all the columns.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
In my case, because when you look, I agree with you. And when I was doing at the time SSIS on premises, right? I was using a C# to get all of the using reflection. I was getting every column I have in my pipeline and saving that as a JSON, right? So I get your point here. Just for my demo, I just wanted to do something very simple here. But I agree. Yeah. It is possible. Not that easy. Not that easy, but possible.
I know that's. But one question: if you scroll to the left, the first object within your data flow, the second one, which is your order, that's the one. I think it was exactly. So here you're saying assert description, assert ID. Is there a way to pass these like filter or expression? Like, is there a way to read all of this from a SQL table? The thing is that being passed on as a parameter. So exactly right here, title value cannot be null, for example, or let's say field cannot be null. Is there a way to pass that and it will either bypass it or even keep it? Is that possible? Do you get what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, yes. Oh, yes. Big time, big time. You and I think we're doing the same work.
Yeah. Yeah, dynamically, like because I have lots of
I can have
my
the
codes
expression
are
builder.
very like I do lots of dynamic work. I'm a little bit
course.
too lazy and I want to do it once and do it once
Yeah.
forever. That's it. Okay,
This
so
is what I
that's
have, the Synapse
possible
thing.
too?
Yeah. Yeah, it
Okay.
might be possible, but not that easy with the assert statement, because even
Okay.
if you're using great expectations, right, the other two, you need to assert something, right? So what you can say is that you might have assert 1, assert 2, assert 3, assert 4
Yeah,
here,
yeah, that's
and
what I
then
meant. Yeah.
and then you will be able to pass the expression, but you need to define, let's say, 10 slots for your asserts.
Oh, so here you have to you have to add them in advance.
It's static, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Oh, if
So
that's
this
the
is
case, it's not worth doing it dynamically if it's
no.
mandatory.
No, yeah, it's mandatory. Yeah, you cannot add it.
Okay.
Or what you could do, right? It's always possible, but as I said, it's not that easy.
Yeah.
You can go here, right? And,
Yeah, I know. Cut and
hijack
paste.
the code
Yeah.
here. Yeah, no, hijack the code at some point. This is, do you know about BIML, Business Intelligent Markup Language?
Yeah.
Okay, this is,
Yeah.
but this is what I wanted to do, right? I want to have to be able to dynamically generate this code here for my pipeline, right? Because
So what I do,
yeah,
just what I do is
yeah,
all these fields, you have them in your Excel file, correct?
yeah.
And
It's a
in
file
your
or
Excel
yeah,
file, I generate exactly what you just showed me. I generate these strings, or whether
yeah,
it's JSON, T-SQL, whether it's source to destination or destination to source, depends whatever the code is. Basically, I only have one, like for example, one copy object that copies all of my CSV files to any source, to any destination, and I've only got one and one only. It does full dynamic everything, but
okay,
this part I can't. This is the part I want to do it like differently using
yes.
data flow. Data flow is still limited, and it's okay. Thank you
Oh,
very
it
much.
depends.
Thanks a
It
lot.
depends because if you look at the data flow channel in YouTube, Mark Cromer wrote something about expression using data quality based on the on a file at some point. I can find try to contact me on LinkedIn. I will try to find this video for you. This is another way to do it
Perfect.
without
Thank you
using
very
the
much.
assert. The thing is, you don't have the nice tools like the is error or something like that. Right? You have to do it on your own, but still, you don't have to hard code anything here. You have. I understand that this assert here, most of the time, yeah, 80% of the time will do the work, but there are some extreme scenarios or dynamic scenarios that it can do for now. But I passed the message to the Synapse team. I said, guys, we need to have a way to define assert dynamically. I passed that message, right? They have that feedback, and we'll do. I will tell them again, because we need a mixture of dynamically here. Because I would like to be able to say, you know what? How many assert do you have? Like you see, when I go to this guy here, right? I have a column pattern. This is very powerful because I can say if type, right, equal type date. Yeah, we go here. Okay. Date here, right? Or the name or whatever. If the name might contain date at some point, then after that, what I can say, you know what? Each columns here, let's save and finish for now. Here we'll say $dollar here and date $dollar.
Yeah.
Okay, so we want to do something similar to that using the assert, right? An expression, a pattern. This is what we want to do using the assert.
Okay, perfect.
Something
Thank you
similar.
very much. Thank you.
My pleasure. So once I did it, I rejected the values here. Yeah, that's fine. I must have messed with something. Yeah, reject here. Perfect. Now you see that we have this here, and if we look at the row value, this is my JSON structure, which is a string. Now I'm going to show you that better, and the table name. And I have somewhere. Let me go here instead, because I do a select here, and if I do a refresh on that one, only it will appear. So I'm able to basically, yeah, this is the error messages. If I click on that here, you see, this is what I want to have here. So I'm rejecting that into my parquet file. And from my parquet file, I'm using the serverless pool, Synapse serverless pool here. I have a serverless database here. I go to my views, and I do. On the rows, I don't have that many rejects here. And when this will happen, it has to wake up my serverless pool. So the row will, oh yeah, no, I need to run it. I always forget about that. Because in SSMS, you say select, yeah, 1,000 rows and it executed automatically. You see, these are my fields because I have title. I have my suffix here. See, my suffix should not start with I, right? Which is not true. I just wanted to have some things here. So now here, what I can do with that, what I'm using into another project is I run all of my data here. With the reject table, I detect if I have a reject from that pipeline ID or run ID, or if I execute multiple pipeline using the execute pipeline task, what I'm going to do, I'm going to say, you know what, let's do a lookup and check if I have data that is greater than my start date time of my load, okay? And then if I reject, I say, okay, I failed my pipeline. Let me just switch desktop here. I will just show you. One pipeline. This is from one of my clients, but I will just show you something. I don't want to show you everything here, just the claim last here, but I want to show you the pipelines. What I mean, if I go to reference to here, yeah, this is the one I was building today. So I store the UTC here. Okay.
Kishan, you're not sharing the screen.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. I'm sorry. I'm on the wrong one. Thank you. Hey guys,
yeah.
what I was saying was so interesting. Let me show you if it's okay. You see, I'm storing my variable here. Okay, the start of my load. Here, imagine that I have a bunch of pipelines that are running. I can call other pipeline that calls other pipeline here, like a pipeline for reference data. I can call a lot of pipeline. Then I do a lookup for the rejects. So what I'm doing here, I'm going to do a count by table name of the rejected rows. If I have rejects here, so the activity here is reject greater, my count is greater than 0 from my lookup. Let's go here and put the error message to a variable. I prefer to do it because when I want to debug, it's easier here. And then it's a load fail, and I have the values of the reject here. So what will happen at the end of the day, then I will use this message here to fail the pipeline. So with the log and analytics at the end, or if I send an alert to someone, they will see all the tables with the reject, with the count of reject that we have. So that person, let me go back to my the desktop here for my presentation. That person, that system administrator, that support person will go here, check the reject that we have for today, and do say, and we'll tell the system administrator, okay, what do we do with that, right? Should we continue? Should we ignore them, or simply we restart the load with better files or better data? So this is how I use it here. And let me go back to my presentation. Current slide, perfect. So this I showed you the reject table simple here. So this is the policy. Yeah, this is another one. Policy is not from CSV file is not found into the database. Sometimes for the referential integrity. So to sum up, it's not a one-time app activity as I mentioned before. It's a process, right? This is something that you have to put in place and that you have to monitor. And this is, but this is essential. This is crucial, especially now with the era of big data. I would say big data is kind of dépassé at some point. Now we're talking about more about data lakehouse. In the era of data lakehouse, we have more and more data we can integrate. Think about that. Before that, how many times people ask me, could you integrate my PDF file, right? Or could you load my data from my image, right? 10 years ago, it was almost impossible. You needed something to shred the data, right? To be able to read the data here. Now with library, we have a lot of libraries in Python that allow us to do it. So Microsoft has a lot of products too that they can offer, not to Microsoft, Google, and Amazon, and products that help you with that, right? So this is a process you always need to enhance to I would say, to assess your data quality all the time here. Data profiling, essential, right? This is something that you have to do as soon as possible, because it might be slow. People will say, oh, what do I do with that, right? It would be slow to analyze all of the data, but it's better that someone that understands, knows the data, or will get the knowledge of this data to analyze this data instead of the developer. Because the developer, he just want to do his transformations, right? To just want to do his platform. So it's better to do it. Python should only react to bad data. So we should react by data, meaning that we should reject the data or tagging rows as faulty. There is another way of doing this. We do not create data. We only integrate it into other systems or target model. Why? I'm just going to show you one last thing. What Microsoft did 2 weeks ago, put it to, they made it to production, but it's not working perfectly. I tried today. Is my assert, but instead of having my reject table here, I go to my sync, and then I can say output to a separate file, right? Brown's error, my Brown's container to the error file, and it's going for each row here. I'm going to have a CSV file that is going to be a CSV file that will contain all the rows that are faulty that didn't pass, right? So I think that it answers half of the question that that I had before. I can redo it done dynamically at some point. The rejects here, I'm talking about if I go back to my other pipeline, I'm sorry. If I go here, me, I'm doing it manually. It's a JSON format here. But what Microsoft did here, it's a plain CSV file that they give you at the end, right? But still might be better than doing it manually. The problem is it doesn't work in that subscription. It works into my other subscription, but not my demo subscription for some reason. So it must be my workspace. But anyway, this is supposed to work. I would have loved to show you the result of it, but I still prefer my way of the way, not in my way, but the way of having a reject table, because everything is centralized at the same place. Because to detect if I have errors, what I would have to do, I would have to go into my pipeline, and then after that, get something like get metadata, right? Metadata right here at the end to check if I have files in that container. If I have files, mean I have rejects. So it's not that easy to do. Better to use the Parquet file to store everything in the same place. Right, let's go here, back to the presentation. Yep. Yeah, I was already at the end of it. So as I said, we do not create data, we only integrate it to other systems or target model. Right, these are some links here that I put there. That dimensional spreadsheet model, right, there. It's very interesting because most of the time people do document in words. Now Word, the problem is you have the section 5, section 6, section 7, and you only need to refer to section 5 when you do something. When you have a good, a plain old Excel spreadsheet, it's much easier to use. Everything is at the same place. And yeah, this is the Azure Synapse Analytics documentation, what I'm using today, and pandas profiling. Are there any questions? Any other questions?
I don't see any more question, but please feel free to ask if you have more question. Nick, go ahead.
Yeah,
Nick is our old friend.
Yeah, yeah. I'm the one who's always in trouble by asking questions. So
no. I love question.
So one of the things I do, when I design something or I compare it with my previous clients and say, okay, they had, let's say, 3 billion records, and I loaded it in, let's say, 3 hours, whatever, or 3 days, whatever it is. Okay.
Yeah.
So can you tell us experience about the durations of your load and the variety of your source and destination? I'll just give you one example. Let's say I have a 5 million CSV file, and it had 10 million records. I'm just throwing examples. It took me 2 hours. So this tells me basically, when I tell people how to design Synapse, I tell them, hey guys, you have to measure. This is exactly what you have never been doing in the past 20 years. So can you tell us some measuring scenario, what you did and what was the result? So anything related to, of course, the presentation.
Yeah, sure. I'm going to show you. I had a system that I did a pilot before Christmas vacation for my current project here. And if I go here, by the way, the choice of the storage account is very important here, okay? Because you have the standard and the premium storage account. The difference is something like $150 more per month for the premium storage account, but it's optimized for I/O, input-output, right? Very important to use the premium storage account here. If I go to my goal here, I'm going to show you the customer, but the goal here, let me check. Claim, right? So I use this this claim data. It's all fake data, so I can easily show it. So Delta, I use the data format, very important. Parquet or Delta as another layer of compression on top of Parquet. So that's why I like Delta a lot. And so the speed of the data integration is related to your source, how fast your source is, and your network too. And just to tell you, this all of these Parquet files, right? The storage is pretty small. Eh? When you look about that, when you look at that, we're talking about a few like maybe something like 400 megs. But in CSV file, it would have been something like many gigabytes of data, right? Parquet will compress up to 15 times the data that you have in CSV. And with Synapse, with Parquet, you have auto statistics, which means that Synapse will increase the performance we have better performance with Parquet here. So if I go back to this here, just to tell you, this seems simple, right? But the thing is, it came from an API. I don't know if you work with API, but I brought something like 2 million rows, 2.5 million rows from many because for many pages, right? I have something like 300 pages to parse into my API. It's not only a single call that returns you everything over the network, and it was JSON format, right? What I retrieved. So, and I have to convert it to a Parquet after. It took me 1 hour for 2.5 million rows here. Why? Because I was using the premium storage account. Premium storage, which is standard, made a difference of 3 times in my case. So this is what I did here for that pilot, and now with the project, now we know where to go with it. We know that we're going to have those APIs now. Talking to 2.5 million, it's nothing, right? It's like it's very small. We're going to have much more than that in the future, right? We have multi-million rows, tens or 100 million rows. But with API,
one
yeah,
question.
go ahead.
You said you were reading from CSV file and converted to Parquet. If you remember, in SSIS, we used to use mode, and we used to split the data into 4 and load it into a partition table in parallel.
Yeah.
Could you do that Could you do that? Because I haven't seen this feature in Data Factory yet. Is it possible?
Yeah, you can do a mode here. Okay, what I would do instead, I would partition on a column. Okay.
Yeah, I know.
If I have a date column,
something, but
you partition the column, and automatically it the Data Factory or Synapse will put it into will split the data, and Nikki, it's Spark, right?
Yeah.
So Spark will do it. Will do the work for you.
So how could I pass this as a parallel into Sparks. And if you remember in SSIS,
Yeah.
you can pick a column and say, hey, give me the mode of 1, 2, 3, 4, and then your destination were the same table, of course, different partitions. Yeah, something like that. Like, well, this is kind of yeah, something like the round robin. You see, the pictures like this. It's not round robin, of course.
No. You would do hash, you would do a dynamic range depending on a specific column. So you have a lot of options. But what I say that the tool now are doing that for you. You don't have to do your mode anymore. You don't have to. You have a lot of less work to do. But the key here is that you need to know your data and you need to do the right architecture of your partitioning, right? Decide what column you're going to partition. And if you use Synapse, the educated pool, right? I don't know if you use that.
Yeah, of course,
so,
of course. Yeah.
So it's, you know that there is difference between round robin, replicated, and hash, right? And between a heat table and a console table, we need to do our homework. Now, the thing with Synapse, you need to make your choice ahead. What's nice with the data lake is that I can always try it, go back, delete everything, and do it again, right? So, but I would use something similar to that here to experiment at some point, or I would use Spark to do it. But it's easier to do.
The Spark, I want to know how it's done. Like, how could you pass Spark and
partition? You're going to use something like you're going to specify what's your partition columns. If you use, let me just go here. Right, let me go to the Lake database, lakehouse DB. Let me open it. This is part of my next presentation, guys. Yeah, that's fine. Thank you very much. Now it's GA. Okay, if I go to my cells here, what's interesting here is that I can go to my columns and partition columns.
Yeah.
So when I design my Parquet file here, now I don't have any, but when I design my...
you don't have it yet.
Yeah, I'm going to use a partition column.
I get your point.
You see? Okay. But you need to do your homeworks.
Of course,
it's easier. It's easier than it was before. Don't get me started with the way that we partition in SQL Server, right? We need to do the partition scheme, partition functions. Whereas in Oracle, that's easy, right? It says just a partition on that, sub-partition on that, right? So with the SQL Server, it's more complex. Now Microsoft tries to do it much more simpler.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. Perfect.
My pleasure.
Yes.
Right.
Thank you. There is more question from Pablo. Pablo, please go ahead and ask the question.
Thank you, and thank you for the presentation. I think it's a great presentation.
Thank you.
I just was wondering if maybe you can give us some insights, some thoughts, what you prefer. I think that the question may be a big question because a lot of perspective, but what do you think when working data quality with data flows or working data quality with notebooks only?
It depends on the library you want to use, right? So data quality, okay. The question is code free or code first, right? This is the question here. And to be honest with you, I'm a big fan of code free or low code, because Data Factory or the pipeline will give me, I will focus on the partitioning, right? I will focus on optimizing the number of, because by default, a Parquet file will have 200 partitions. So this is a default that exists in Spark, right? So if I have 200 many files, right, I need to optimize them at some point. So my preference is to use, when it's possible, use something that is already built, reuse what is already built. I like to write code, but I'm getting older and I'm starting to get lazy. So, but at the same time, adding 100 transformation into a mapping data flow is not a good idea when I can have 5 lines of code, right? It's a balance between both. But I would favor the no code or the low code approach. I would say, because it's not no code, it's low code. We're doing code there. In favor of the code first approach, but if it's too complicated, doing it with code free, right, with mapping data flows, I will go to the Spark. And with Spark, sometimes I'm not afraid to call a script in a mapping data flow. Now we can do it, a Python script, or calling a REST API, or calling a notebook instead. I don't have any issue. I have a client that have an Excel file, right? That the column changes every month, but it's always the same column, but the name of the column changes every month. I could use schema drift with mapping data flow, but it would not work as I would like to, right? I want to have a fixed schema here. So this is why I'm using a Spark notebook. And with the Spark notebook, then I can just say, you know what, column 0 is name, column 1 is I would say column 0 is full name, 1 is first name, column 2 is last name here. I have more control with the code in those kind of situations. It depends of your data sources.
Amazing. Thank you.
Thank you, Pablo. There is one more question from Raymond.
Sure. Yes, Raymond.
Yes. I forgot which slide was that. Like, but you show some slide where there's data flow where you could preview like first 10K of votes from the data. So like if I have like if I try to get those first 10K votes from like partition table, like does it just fetch the first 10K, or like you could try to do some sampling from each partition?
It depends. It depends if you filter. If you don't filter anything, you will filter the first 10K. What? Let me go back here, right? Because what this thing is going to do. Let me close this guy here. Anyway, doesn't matter. So what this guy is going to do when you go to the debug settings here, I say 100,000. Okay. When you develop here, okay, and you have millions of rows. Okay, let's go to 10 million rows here. Okay. If I have the default that you can see is 1,000. Sometimes I will have data mismatch, right? The lookup will not be found because I don't have enough rows. So I will augment it to 1 million or 10 million, right? Depending on the integration runtime I'm using. If I go to the pipeline here, and no, pipeline isn't. Pipeline here, perfect. If I go here, go to my settings, right? Now I use the basic core count, right? But if I need more, I'm going to use a faster mode. A faster one here, 32 cores.
Okay.
Yeah, this is what I would do. And then I will be able to fetch the data that I want here. But in debug mode, they cannot show you the 10 million rows or the 1,000 million rows, but your lookup will work, right? Instead of giving you nulls, and sometimes it's misleading here. And the other thing is when I showed you that I was able to do a query somewhere using a script here.
Yeah.
Microsoft, yes, you should, because I can connect to this database, right? It's using other tools like SSMS, because here it needs to use HTML5, right? If I use SSMS, it will be much faster. Just to tell you, now we always talk about the egress and everything, right? How much it costs, right? 1 terabyte costs $6 and something a month in Canada, $5 with USD. Okay, so I downloaded this data many times, like something like 10 times, and it cost me something like 10 cents. So 2.5 million rows, it's 10 times, so 25 million rows cost me like 10 cents. So it's very cheap to use the serverless pool. And sometimes in your mapping data flow, you can say if I'm using a CSV file or whatnot, I can query this data here, and then I can simply, in my mapping data flow, just bring the data I want using where clause or row number transformation. I would say Windows function like row number. I can do a lot of things. I don't know if it answers your question.
I see. So if I want to sample from each partition, I better do this SQL script.
Yes. Or you filter, right? Or you do a query here. If you do a query, this is what you would do here. But now, how would you do it? It depends on your data, right? Because you would do something like row number transformation and smaller than 100,000 or something like that, right?
Mhm.
It's custom code then,
Okay. Yep. Okay.
right?
Yes.
My pleasure.
Okay. Any more question? No, if not, then yeah. Nick, yeah, go ahead, please.
Yeah, go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, one more question. This is just an experience question. So again, let's say I have millions of files and billions of data or records. Why am I saying this? Because I work with lots of IoT and I work with lots of banks and they have ridiculous amount of data. But I'm just trying to gain your experience. Will it be a good idea to basically dump everything into serverless SQL pool and then use the power of the pool? We're talking about Gen 2 technology.
Yes.
And to do the profiling, and will it be faster? Like, what's your experience? Have you done that? Like, when I mean, have you done it? I'm sure you've done it, but with a crazy amount of data. Will that be a good idea? Because bringing into dedicated SQL pool, I know you have some luxury, like, cherry picking the distribution of, hash or round robin. Will the dedicated pool will be a good idea, but the serverless SQL pool will be more faster, I think. They're sitting there as a CSV or IoT, and then you just read it. Like, which one do you think, or your experience? What are your experience on that?
The serverless pools have been enhanced a lot last fall, right? Fall 2021. Now it's much faster. Yeah, we use the serverless pool. Just to give you an example, I have one client here that they were doing a lot of complex views, like 1,500 rows of code views, SQL code, right? So, so 16 union all, right? Bear with me, they were using union before. I said the union how would make a big difference, right? Because it will not sort your data. And even with the Synapse, the dedicated pool, you cannot optimize this, right? Because it's drawing between 25 tables with left joins and nulls and stuff like this. So what we did, because it's taking a lot of because with Synapse the dedicated pool, you have the concurrency there, right? So if you're using DW 500, for example, I can have only 20 queries running concurrently, right? But the goal of it is that it's so fast that usually it's not an issue. But if I have a query that runs for 1 hour, first of all, they try to run it with Azure SQL, right? Even the biggest Azure SQL was not returning after 5 hours.
Yeah, it's
we
not
ran
gonna
it.
work.
No, yeah, we ran it to run using round robin in Synapse, the script pool, and it ran in something. I had the first result, the first 1,000 rows in 5 minutes. That's fine. But the problem is that view is running, it takes 1 hour, right? Sometimes to generate something like 15,000 rows, which is nothing, right? They want to get except they are doing some kind of data mining there. They want to get the errors, the rejects that they have. So what I did, because it was running in 1 hour during the day and it was in a lot of DWUs, I said, let's run it because we want to load it into Power BI Premium. Okay, let's run it into the serverless pool. If it takes, we have a timeout of 1 hour and something, and 1 hour and a half a minute with Power BI, but that's okay. Let's run it there, and we simply create a pipeline that creates a Parquet file. The Power BI simply reads that Parquet file. So we leverage off. We remove off some pressure from the SQL Server, the dedicated pool, and by using the serverless pool. It can take 3 hours. I don't care, right? I'm not paying. I'm paying for 15,000 rows here, which is nothing.
Yeah, and to get it into the Parquet, you got it from the dedicated to the Parquet? Like, you went from dedicated to serverless, or you had them in the Parquet format? Like,
no, because we're using a Delta Lake.
Okay, so you still had to do the 15 union joins.
Oh yes, yes, we're still doing that, right? No, the real work would have been to let's look at those joints, right? Let's try to
Oh, okay.
optimize
Yeah,
them,
yeah, of
right?
course. Of course.
Yeah, but we never have we never have any time for that, right?
Yeah, yeah.
This is the issue.
It's extremely typical scenario, having
Yes.
26 left joins or 28 indexes on one table.
Oh,
Generally,
geez, yeah.
typical scenarios. Okay.
Oh yeah, the 20 indexes, and no one knows what those index are for, right? And they are reducing the performance of your queries at some point
Yeah.
of your loads. So yeah, so and the reason why we did it also, we didn't want to tax we didn't, we use DW 1000, okay? So we didn't want to go to 2000 or 3000 because the price goes up like bananas with them. So,
But you could have brought it dynamically down, even if you went up to 3,000 and you brought it
yes,
from, you could have still brought it down.
yeah, but I need to
Right.
pause my system for that.
Oh,
I need
okay.
to pause it, right? And during the day, I mean, production, I cannot afford that luxury of pausing my. Yes, if I do it at midnight, I agree with you, right? Or at 10 p.m., that's okay. I agree with you. But
Okay.
now, yeah, but we already add the data lake. So what we're doing now from the silver zone, we're pushing to Synapse and we're pushing to a gold database at some point, which is data lake. And from there, we're running all the big report we bring that from the serverless pool. It's slower, not as fast as Synapse, of course. It doesn't cost the same price, right? Synapse DW500 will cost you pay as you go $6,000 a month, right? Serverless pool would cost you $6 for 1 terabyte. So
your Power BI was pointing to the serverless instead of your dedicated. Is that correct?
yes, yeah,
Okay.
serverless,
Okay.
but the
Yeah,
serverless
it's
file,
cheaper. Yeah.
yeah, it's cheaper, but I'm using a
cheaper.
pipeline that is going to generate a Parquet file, and Power BI will point to a view on top of the Parquet file.
Okay. Okay. Yeah,
But
of course.
sometimes with simpler query, we don't need the Parquet file. We just need the Power BI is going to point to a view.
So your
And that's
Power
it.
BI was pointing to the view within your serverless SQL pool that was pointing to the Parquet.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Perfect. Perfect. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Yeah, it's great discussion. It's a lot of
No,
learning.
just something very interesting. So these are like, we have the same scenarios. I've gone through the same scenarios. It's just I tell the clients that you have to have someone from Microsoft as an example for a second opinion. So right now the questions I'm asking is, it's like asking a second opinion and confirming the same scenarios, because there's not so many experience out there. And when you find someone like Christian is the best person that you can basically get his experience on the real, real scenarios like production, and compare it to what you're doing it. I think that's the only way to do it.
Yeah.
But anyway, thank you very much. It was brilliant.
My pleasure, Nick.
I loved it.
My pleasure. You know what? I would say that it's the same for me. When I do those transitions, I speak with someone like you. I learned too, because I don't know everything, right? So
Of course. Yeah. No, yeah.
we have to be humble to say that we learn too, right? So interesting. All right, guys.
Yep. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you
It
so
was a
much,
pleasure.
Christian. It is great learning, definitely. And Nick and everyone, who's joined. It's great pleasure meeting you, especially Nick, talking with you after so long. Hopefully we're gonna meet soon again, right?
Yes.
And
October 22nd.
right, definitely. And Christian, please share your PPT,
I will.
because then I can share with all the audience. And
Yes.
thank you so much, and
Yeah.
have a
Right.
lovely.
All right, guys. Thank you very much. Very interesting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.